If you are considering renting to a Section 8 tenant, there are some things that you need to know that are not the same as they used to be a few years ago. In this video today, I am going to give you a breakdown of the procedure of renting to a Section 8 tenant in the year 2026. I'm Monique Burns. I started with my very first tenant who moved in 2008, had Section 8. I knew absolutely nothing. My background check of her was, wow, she seems nice. That was the extent of it. She taught me how Section 8 works and how to fill out the paperwork, and I turned it all in, and they started paying, and she moved in, and guess what? She's my best tenant I've ever had, and she's still in our property. So I really am partial to Section 8. A lot of people are against it, but I'm going to give you some of the pros and cons as we go through this procedure. In 2008, we started building up our own portfolio. 99% of my tenants have a Section 8 voucher. And the one cash paying tenant I have is absolutely amazing, wouldn't trade her for anything. I had a property management company from 2015 to 2020. I had to learn how to do background checks. At that time, I couldn't be like, well, she's nice. And I also learned a lot about the procedure of how Section 8 works. The procedure is still the same. What's different now is COVID hit. So in 2020, I sold my property management company, and then we keep flipping houses. If that's something that you're interested in doing together with us, buying a distressed property, renovating it, putting a tenant in it, set up a time on Calendly to call me. Or if you need to sell any of your portfolio, or if you are looking to buy properties, I have been connecting buyers and sellers of Detroit rental properties. You can email me, see what I have going on. I'd love to work with you. That's why I make these videos. And if you could subscribe every Saturday, I don't know how I do it, but I find more quality content to give you to make your investing journey go even better. What is the first step? You need to prepare your house for a Section 8 tenant. Now, back when I had the property management company, I forced my husband into making a video. He doesn't like to make videos. I forced him into making a video. I said, I put the camera in front of him and I said, talk about what you have to do to pass a Section 8 inspection. And so definitely check that out. Now, I told you 2026, things are different. One of the things that has changed is the smoke detectors. So when you are preparing your house, you have to have a 10-year sealed smoke and carbon detector on each floor. So we deal with bungalows. We have a basement, we have a first floor, and then a lot of people call it an attic, but the attic is converted into a bedroom. So the whole upstairs is one room. So we put a smoke and carbon up there. In each bedroom, you have to put a 10-year sealed smoke detector, not smoke and carbon, a 10-year sealed smoke detector. Now, if my upstairs, if it were a colonial and there was a hallway, I'd put the smoke and carbon in the hallway and just the smokes in the bedrooms. So I hope that made sense. I do always have a blog that goes with my videos. If it's easier for you to just read it, you can go ahead and link out to that. If you go into the description box or into the pinned comments, you can link out to my blog. So you have your house ready. Now you're ready to advertise for a Section 8 tenant. And if you want a Section 8 tenant, you can put in the opening line of your listing. I would recommend using Zillow. Put in there, Section 8 welcome, Section 8 okay. And that tells people with Section 8 that they should go apply for your house. So now the next thing is the tenant calls you and they say that they have Section 8. They usually reveal that right away because a lot of people don't want to work with them, even though it's illegal not to anymore, at least in Michigan. That's a form of discrimination against the source of income. But when they call and they announce that they have Section 8, there are some questions that you have to ask them. Do you have your move packet? That's their papers that they're allowed to move. You do not want to work with them until they have their move packet in hand. It can take a really long time for them to get those papers that qualify them to move. And then you want to ask them, what is your rent now where you're living? Well, during COVID, the rents were really high. So in Detroit, during COVID years, the rents were around $1,500 a month for a 3-bedroom house. They have since come down. In 2025. The rents started coming down and now it's 26. In 25, they were coming down to around 1,200. In 26, they seem to have leveled off. This is only February, but they're right around 1,200, give or take, depending on the housing commission and the tenant situation, if they work or not. But they should be right around in the 1,200 range. So if you ask them, what's your current rent? Well, if they moved in during COVID, it kind of doesn't count. It doesn't help you. And then I always want to know how much of that rent do they have to pay, because that's how much you're going to have to collect. Section 8 doesn't pay the whole rent to you. They pay rent, and then the tenant has to pay you 30% of the tenant's income. The tenant pays directly to us, the landlords. So I'm always curious, how much of that rent are the tenants paying? And then if they really can't answer these questions because they're new, which right now there aren't very many new tenants on Section 8. There really aren't. If they are new on Section 8, I'd be curious how they got it. And I'd ask a lot of questions about, wow, how did you get a voucher? I thought they weren't giving out very many new vouchers, and find out what the backstory is to that. But if you really can't go off what their old rent was, say, well, what did your caseworker tell you? And I will tell you, whatever they answer you, take it with a grain of salt, because the way that the caseworkers present that to the tenants is so confusing, and you cannot be mad at the tenants for not understanding it. It makes absolutely no sense. There's too many if this then that's, so you don't really know. So if it seems like maybe it's going to work and be close enough to what the rental amount is that you're asking for, you go ahead and you schedule them to see the house. And if they like the house, they give you those papers, the move papers. After they give you the paperwork, there's a very important step that you have to do. You figure out who is their caseworker. The tenant will know their caseworker's name. It's easier to email caseworkers. And this is what I say. Will this tenant qualify to rent this house? And you give the address for this amount of money, and you give the amount that you want. I always make it a little bigger just in case, leave some room to negotiate on there. And I always say in the email, I really don't want to charge this tenant an application fee if they're nowhere close to the amount that I'm asking for. And then I just make a bullet point list: this many square feet, this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms. And then I list out some features about the house. You have to say if you're supplying appliances or not. Break down as many of the details as you can in that email. Sometimes they answer you, sometimes they don't. And you fill them out, and the paperwork will have a request for a version of the following: the deed, a current tax bill. Detroit Housing Commission wants a water bill with zero amount due. They want your LLC docs, your articles of organization, your EIN, your W-9, and then they have their own paperwork, like where you fill out your bank information so that they can make direct deposits to you. So once all this paperwork is filled out and sent in, the next step is waiting for them to email you saying that they want to schedule the inspection. And it depends on the Housing Commission how long it takes to get that email. Typically maybe a week or two, but if it's Detroit Housing Commission, it could be a month that you're waiting just for them to say, okay, we're coming out to do the inspection. You just lost a month's worth of rent, which really stinks. But once you get the tenant in, you can kind of forget about that part. So they come out and they inspect the house. They don't typically pass it the first time. They like to find something. And so they find something, and they'll tell you right there what you need to repair. And the inspector will come back a week later. You call in and say, okay, I'm done. I need him to come back, and get yourself on the calendar as fast as you can. Once it has passed that inspection, the tenant is allowed to move in. Don't let them move in before. Now your tenant's in. Every first of the month, you start getting paid rent into your bank account. It's a beautiful thing. But once a year, or it could be every other year, it could be once every 3 years, that Section 8 office will come out to inspect your house. And this is what happens. Those darn $60 smoke detectors, they beep and they drive the tenants nuts, and they rip them out of the ceiling, and they miraculously lose them all. And so your inspector comes out, and you have a 24-hour notice, must replace these. We just replace them. We have very long-term tenants. We appreciate them. We don't bill the tenants for them. We should. I know we should, but we don't. Most people would bill their tenants for these missing smoke detectors. We just replace the smoke detectors and do whatever else is necessary. And it's really not that bad, because we're just not slumlords. And then when your tenant wants to move out, you're sent a form saying, does this tenant owe you any back rent or any money? And if they do, Section 8 will not give them that move packet. And while you have the tenant, you can't treat the tenant's caseworker as a judge. You can't, you can tattle on the tenant. You can turn in lease violations. You can turn in a 7-day notice that they didn't pay their rent, but you can't expect Section 8 to do anything about it. That goes into a file, if the tenant does something super egregious and Section 8 is deciding whether or not they're going to kick them off the program, they're going to open the file and say, well, you did have a lot of lease violations. But you need to handle all your court things directly with the court. I am happy with my own Section 8 tenants, but here in 2026, if one of them moved out, I would definitely be available to the first most qualified tenant, not necessarily only Section 8. I've had a really good run of it, but I would be very much more open than I ever used to be to cash paying tenants, just because $100 a month is a lot of money difference. But you need to know in your own state, what is the rent? So if you're not in Detroit, what you do to find this out is you call the property manager and say, hey, how much are the Section 8 rents coming in for a 3-bedroom house compared to your cash paying tenants? And are the Section 8 offices coming back and reducing the rent if the Section 8 tenant stays? That's another good question to ask. That has never happened to me, but I've heard it has happened to other people. You might get that $1,200 rent, but then the next year when the tenant recertifies, they could write back to you and say that they need it to be for less. It could happen. So just be open-minded and be aware and ask the right questions. And if you have any questions of me, you can comment below or you can email me, and I really appreciate you watching.